His golden locks time hath to silver turned. O time too swift, O swiftness never ceasing, his youth 'gainst time and age hath ever spurned, but spurned in vain, youth waneth by increasing. Beauty, strength, youth are flowers but fading seen. Duty, faith, love are roots and evergreen. His helmet now shall make a hive for peace, and lovers' sonnets turn to holy songs. A man at arms must now serve on his knees, and feed on prayers which are ages' alms. Beauty, strength, youth are flowers but fading seen. Duty, faith, love are roots and evergreen. And when he saddest sits in homely sand, he'll teach his swains this carol for a song. Blessed be the hearts that wish my sovereign well, cursed be the soul that think her any wrong. Beauty, strength, youth are flowers but fading seen. Duty, faith, love are roots and evergreen.
All right. Can you all hear me?
Hey, y'all.
Hi.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Well, happy Labor Day, everyone. Thanks for tuning in this Choir Nerd podcast. I'm your host, Mark David Obenza, and I'm pleased to have tenor Zach Finkelstein back on the show to talk about, this time, his second release with me and Scribe Music, called Dark is Yonder Town. And we also have the other artists today on the album, on the podcast, and just want to thank you all for joining us here.
Absolutely.
Great.
Before we get started, just want everyone to know that if you like what you just heard and want to support and buy the album to own for yourself, you can buy it. You can buy the music. The links are in the description, or also in the comment thread. So there are many ways to do it through Amazon. You can go old school, buy a physical CD through Zach, or you can stream it through Apple Music. So I hope you'll support the music that way. So I guess briefly, why don't we just go around and introduce ourselves here? You can just tell us what your name and what you do and what your contribution was on the album. Zach?
Sure. My name is Zach. I'm a professional tenor. I live in Seattle with my wife, Deborah, and my son, Remy. And in my spare time, I make dad rock albums, which I think this fits the bill. I mean, my contribution is I made it with y'all. And it's a beautiful snapshot of where I was in May 2019 and where Dieter was and like our musical taste at that moment. And it's just, it really captured that hopeful 2019 vibe we all had. So it was a lot of fun making it with y'all, and I'm very appreciative to have this team.
Cool. Dieter?
Yes. Well, my name is Dieter Hennings, and I am a professor of guitar at the University of Kentucky in Lexington. And I also play in a number of different new music ensembles, one of them being the Zon Collective. Actually, the composer Ricardo Zon will be joining us shortly. I think he's waiting to get in as well. It is in this ensemble, the Zon Collective, where I met Zach, and I collaborated first with Zach. And I think this came up in conversations about doing a collaboration together. And I was very fortunate to be able to go to Seattle and do the CD with you all and of this amazing music. So very, very happy with that. So yeah, that's basically what I do.
Cool. Jesse?
Yeah, my name is Jesse Jones. I'm a composer. I guess my contribution would be that I wrote one of the tracks on this album, the title track, it turns out, which I'm happy about. I teach at the Oberlin Conservatory of Music. Currently, I think I'm starting my 5th year here. I know Zach from Tanglewood, which has almost been a decade ago. We've done a few collaborations together. And I know Dieter actually playing Ricardo's music. We first met playing Ricardo's music at Eastman, again, over a decade ago. So there's a fun circle here among us.
Yes.
So.
Great. Well, if you're just tuning in, feel free to throw in a comment or question, and we'll try to respond to them as we see them show up here on the comment feed. And my name is Mark David Obenza, and I had the pleasure of doing all the production and the audio recording for the album. And this is our number 2 together, our second music child together, Zach. So that's
definitely one way to put
it. So Zach, why don't you tell us a little bit about the concept behind the disc and the music choice and the programming?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had just come out of, in 2017, we released our first album. It was the Britain Canticles, and it was just this, magical group of pieces that grew out of my love of Britain from doing the Young Artist program out in Alborough, which I learned how to pronounce. And it started from, okay, I want to keep exploring Britain repertoire. I'm really interested in early music, Dowland. And I just have this, and I have, obviously, my son was about to be born, and I had all these questions about how it was going to work. How, I wrote a piece on my site, Middle Class Artist, called 83 Days, which is, how is this going to work when I'm gone 83 days a year? How do I instill the values that are important to me, to my son, and send him off into the world potentially, while being true to myself and to him and my, what I value the most in the world, which is, my family, music, and, not in that order, of course, but, both very important. And I was really struggling with it at the time. I had reached out to Dieter when we worked together in Guadalajara for my first tour of Comala, the opera by Ricardo Zon. And I mean, not only did I fall in love with the music, but we were just so in tune with each other's artistry in Mexico. And he's such an empathetic player, and I felt like his guitar tone really matched my voice. And I was just like, I don't know what we're gonna do, but we're gonna do something together. It might involve Dowland, it might involve Britain, and then that just kind of evolved into a full-length project. We wanted to bring Ricardo's music in because it was so special to us. That time in 2018 when I toured with them was like one of the happiest musical memories of my life, and I wanted to share that. And the piece Nuestro Polvo was our duet during that tour. It's such a powerful serenade. It really spoke to me, and I thought it really paired well with the piece that I asked Jesse to write. Ended up being Dark as Yonder Town. Both invoke this very dark. If you look at the cover of the album, there's sort of a person either walking into the woods or coming out of the woods, and it's like, is that the hero? Is that the villain? Like what? Where is he going? I mean, is it better? Is where he's going better than where we're at right now? Like, we don't know. There's so much uncertainty, and I was really trying to capture the uncertainty in my life at the time, where I knew I wanted to do music. I knew I wanted to have. I mean, obviously, I was having a child, and I was really trying to figure out how to do both, and tying in, Tanglewood, which is where I really started my career in a lot of ways, where I met Jesse, and kind of like tying it off with this wonderful, zone tour of Guadalajara and parts of the U.S. and we can talk about the themes later when Ricardo comes on the pod. But yeah, I mean, it just these two were like, it was like the perfect bookend to that time, and both pieces they ended up working perfectly together, which we can talk about, from a thematic point later. But that's sort of the gist of it.
What is Tanglewood?
It's a magical place.
Oh man.
I went, back when I decided to reboot my life at the age of 26 and, leave Canadian politics and become a musician, which is a whole story for another pod. One of the first things I did was I went to Tanglewood, and it was one of the most formative experiences of my life. It's a young artist, basically a young artist program where you get together singers and conductors and orchestra members, and it's all about new music and in this vibrant, beautiful place in Western Massachusetts, which is also happens to be where my parents live. And yeah, that's where I met Jesse, and I went actually 2 summers in a row, and it really changed my life in a lot of ways.
So it's a cult.
It's essential. I mean, opera. Yeah. I mean, isn't music kind of culty? No. It just. I mean, how you're. When you're young. I mean, I wasn't that young, but in my music career, I was quite young, and those first like magical moments in your life when you really experience music at a high caliber, like really, really stick. And that was one of the first moments in my adult life where I had experienced people who shared my values, who wanted the same thing, that we all wanted to make this beautiful music together in this beautiful setting. And yeah, I mean, it completely changed my life. So
nice. Well, why bother recording a disc now, Zach? And what was it like? I'm sure a lot of musicians.
Oh, you're right. Why bother?
Yeah,
oh
I
God.
know. I'm sure a lot of musicians
It's over. No,
are wondering, like, why even bother? Why did you? How did you go about doing it? And I guess I can speak more later about what that recording process was like. But
yeah, well, the first is you have to put on the Ocean's 11 theme, and I assembled a crack team of thieves to unlock the Bastier Chapel. I mean, I basically got together, Dieter, you and I feel like are this like magical team. And it really is just like a personal thing. You just put a bunch of people in a beautiful venue and make some magic. And sort of going back to the original, why, I think, it is a cliche, but music, I think, has never been more important. We're heading into, global uncertainty. All these things we can't control, but what we can control is, being able to put beauty into the world at a time of our choosing with the people we care about. And that's a very special thing. Not everyone gets to do that. So I'm going to keep doing it no matter what. Even if the symphonies don't come calling for a while, I'm still going to be doing these albums. Dieter and I are going to be pumping out the hits onto Facebook. Right. So it brings me great joy, and I know it brings other people joy. And I'm going to keep doing it until I can.
Sweet. I'm always impressed with the level of musicians I get to work with on your albums. I mean, everyone's super amazing, and it was also great to get acquainted with Dieter. I actually don't know. I mean, I know a few. I don't know any guitarists like you that just tear it up. Just
no, I mean, I may be the only guitarist that is 6'9", so yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
I feel safe around you, Dieter.
I also feel safe.
Oh boy. Well, I wouldn't be so sure about that. But, hey, Mark.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just by the way, Ricardo is waiting for you to let him in. I think.
Oh yes. Thank you.
He's there. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Great. Well, maybe we'll make this transition now. Let's see. I did speak to. Ricardo, I'll be with you in a few seconds here. I don't know if you can hear me. Oh, I think you can hear
I
me.
think 4 is the magic number apparently on the streaming service.
Right, but I know.
That's right.
But just a few comments quickly about the recording process and what that was like. It's pretty actually simple. I mean, everyone's like, "How do you get such a great sound?" You know, doing intimates. It's really 80% mic placement. You know, obviously the artists can't suck.
20% musician.
That's right.
That's the perfect 80% mics.
80% vocoder,
right.
20%.
In terms of production quality, it's 80% where you put those mics, and then you have control over balance and just technically, we used a ribbon mic, a Royer ribbon mic on the guitar, which has a nice warm sound. That's not a cheap puppy, but worth it. And a Sennheiser on Zach. It was just 3 channels total, and let the room work for itself. Get a quiet room, and mics in the right place, and any musician can sound like a rock star. So, but yeah, so I'm gonna sign out and let you 4 take the floor. But before I do, I just want to remind everybody, if you're just tuning in, that you can support the album by buying it on Amazon, and there are links in the comments where you can do that, or you can buy an old school CD that is a compact disc.
I will say, if you live in Canada, it costs me almost as much as the album to send it to you. So
Yes,
buy 2 or just stream it, I would say.
Yeah. But so I hope you will do that, and we're going to go on a short break here. Take everybody off.
Come again, sweet love doth now invite thy graces that refrain to do me due delight, to see, to hear, to touch, to kiss, to die with thee again in sweetest sympathy. Come again, that I may cease to mourn through thy unkind disdain. For now left and forlorn, I sit, I sigh, I weep, I faint, I die in deadly pain and endless misery. Gentle love, draw forth thy wounding dart. Thou canst not pierce her heart, for I that too approve, by sighs and tears more hot than are thy shafts did tempt, while she for mighty triumph laughs.
Hello.
Hey everyone, can we get Ricardo on the stream? Yay!
There he is.
In the age of Zoom, we can only fit 4 people on this pod. It used to be called The Nerd, but I've taken over. It's now the Zach Finkelstein 24/7 stream, so you're all on forever now. Let's start with Ricardo. So, I admire your work so much. I'm so thankful that you were able to arrange Nuestro Polvo, the album, and we met during this amazing tour of your opera Comala in Guadalajara, and maybe we can just start from there, talking about maybe you and Dieter can talk a little bit about Comala and the role of this aria in the opera.
Right.
Sure.
Well, I'll start by saying that I met Ricardo while I was a student at the Eastman School of Music in Rochester, New York, and that's when I found out that he had written this piece in which the guitar plays such a central role. I started to try to get my hands on the score and try to learn different movements, and found it to be quite a challenge, but a very rewarding challenge from the guitar perspective. The music is idiomatic, but is wonderfully evocative, and it's always and it's sort of it's almost like one of the main narrators of the score of this beautiful work. And of course, Ricardo can tell us a lot more. This piece continues to grow, luckily for all of us, and more branches and leaves come out of this Comala tree, and actually it's becoming quite the song tree, which is, I'm alluding to another piece of Ricardo then. Nuestro Polvo has been it's been on the latter end of the movements that has been added to this. And of course, it's just it's a dynamite number for tenor and guitar, with the other instruments supporting at the end. And Ricardo arranged it for this album to be just a solo guitar work. Yeah, Ricardo, maybe you want to tell us a little bit about Bartolomé San Juan and all the wonderful characters that are depicted in your work.
Yes, but can you hear me? Yeah.
Yep.
I just want to mention a very interesting Freudian slip that just slipped past us, because Dieter said I arranged it as a solo guitar work, but I think it does have a tenor in it.
It was your original intention.
No, when Dieter's listening to the album, he just has his parts on repeat. So
that was very funny. Thanks. Congratulations, first of all, Zach and Dieter, for this wonderful, and also to Jesse for this new work there. I think it's fantastic that you're putting this, and it's interesting how you mentioned this circle of relationships and how things unfold in life like that. I met Jesse as a mandolin player who was studying composition at Cornell, and later on I got to know his work. He came to Italy to this festival that we invited him, I don't know how many years ago, and I got to know then much more of his music, which was really fantastic, wonderful stuff. So I'm really glad that he's collaborating with you. And I heard about Zach from John Liberator, who must have been at the same Tanglewood session. And John was studying at Eastman and came with this, reviews of this like amazing tenor. I mean, it was just like, it's really it's all true. And so I'm very glad that we got to work eventually, and all the publicity turned out to be true. You really, it's been a pleasure. And Dieter, when I met him, it's one of the great understatements from someone. We met, and he said, I hear you have this work, and I'm interested in the guitar part. And he said, I'm studying. I'm here to study a lute DMA with Paul Odette. And he later became a double major, but he said, and by the way, I also play the guitar, which was like, as I found out, yes, he really did. Extraordinary guitarist, really, a musician, incredible. And so I think this Comala has been very intertwined with Dieter at this point, because for me, being in the past a guitarist, it was very difficult to come back to the guitar. And then I had written a little bit, and then Dieter came into the fold of this work, and after that it's becoming like a guitar concertino more and more, because all the numbers have the guitar. And Nuestro Polvo was actually written partly in a guitar that Dieter lent me on the night before the first performance of that song.
that sounds all right.
Yeah. So he had finished practice for the day. I took the guitar to my hotel room, to finish Nuestro Polvo. And then the next day they rehearsed it. Paul Vaillancourt told me he was coming out of the shower and heard this, this song being rehearsed. So anyhow, it's just, the character in that particular song it's a very sad text, and it's a father talking to his daughter who has lost her mind, really, and asking her why she denies him and why she denies God and all sorts of very plaintive things. But the root of the matter is that the father abused her. And so this is made clear in the book, and in a kind of not overtly, but it's understood that that's what happened. And so it's this it's a very, very sad tale, and at the same time a very kind of this character is speaking from a real sense of denial. And so at the end of the song, and that's now the part that the guitar plays, because in the original the soprano addresses back the male character, the father. The guitar now delivers those lines where the father asks her, "So are you crazy? Why do you deny me?" And she says, "Yes, of course I'm crazy. Didn't you know? I've been crazy for a long time." And so there's many reasons why I love that text. And it was important for me in Comala because it was the first time that I think I felt really comfortable just writing an aria. And composers have their hang-ups. I've been writing music with text and with, tunes and all these kinds of things. But that really felt like an aria. So it was a very important one. And I'm so glad that now it's recorded. There's no other recording really of this song.
Oh, I'm so glad you were able to write it. You mentioned the novel. Can you talk a little bit more about Pedro Paramo and what inspired you to create an opera on it? What was it about the story that excited you and inspired you?
Well, it's I think one of the greatest literary works of the century. It's very well known in Latin America and Spain, and less so outside, although it's translated into, I think, 40 some languages. Juan Rulfo wrote only 2 books, a collection of short stories, and then Pedro Paramo. And it's essentially a story of love gone wrong. It's like what the worst outcome of a love obsession, perhaps. So the main character falls in love with this woman when they're very young, when they're practically children. She leaves the town, this little village. And so all his efforts thereafter are to try to gain power and become basically the owner of every, not just of the town, but everyone's lives in a way, just to have the power to bring her back. And eventually he brings her back to this town. He finds her, her father took her to look for mines somewhere. But by then, Susana has gone mad because of all this abuse and all sorts of horrible experiences. And so when he has Susana back with him, she cannot communicate. So it's a very tragic thing because he has sacrificed everything, and in fact sacrificed a lot of people's lives to enable this idea that he has of this absolute love. But then when she comes back, she's I don't know, in modern days we would call it schizophrenic or whatever, dissociated. And then eventually Susana dies, and Pedro Paramo is so upset about this that he lets the town die of hunger. And so the book is told in a very circuitous way. And this, this could be a very longer talk, but I was very touched by the story, by the incredible way in which it's narrated, in which you realize as you go through the book that all these characters are actually already dead, their memories, and you have kind of entered this place which has many points of entry. There's many little stories intertwined. And the character of Susana was particularly touching from a family history point of view, because my paternal grandmother suffered from very severe mental illness. And So I growing up, I saw this, and it's just very, very gripping to see someone who really loses touch with the world. In the case of my grandmother, it was losing a child, perhaps, but also being Jewish, like escaping persecution, and then ending up in Mexico, and which was probably like going to Jupiter. This, at the time, I mean, from Vienna, to Tlaquepaque, Mexico. You can imagine the journey. So it has that kind of additional layer, which I guess for all artists, musicians, there's always maybe some personal stake, but that's just my own very personal connection with that.
Thanks for sharing that, Ricardo. One of the most striking things about the production that when I was a part of it is the addition of puppets from the company La Cooperacha. Could you speak a little bit about that collaboration? How did it start, and how do you think it affected the work? Because I know you were also writing and revising during that process. Did it influence any of your writing, or how did that come to pass?
Yeah, interesting. Well, the writing and rewriting, yeah, that's. I think I used to feel self-conscious about it, and then I embraced it. And now every time the piece is performed, I just add a scene. It's become like now a mantra. and so it's like a village that keeps growing, and this architecture just grows like a village. As new characters have to build a home, I just build them an area or something. And I've collaborated with several other artists. One of them was Darren Stevenson from Push Physical Theater here in Rochester. They did a version of this in 2013. And then this time, I always was very curious about having puppets in this piece, because puppets are, as you know, they kind of mediate a person, the person who's operating them. And so they seem to be alive, but they're not alive. And that kind of aspect of it is very much like what's happening in Comala, where there's this two singers, the tenor and the soprano, who embody all the characters in the novel. So sometimes you sing the father of Susana, other times you are Pedro Páramo, and so on. And I really love the puppets by this company. I had worked with them a little bit, and when I talked to the director about doing a version of Comala, he was, immediately very attracted to the idea. And he had found these paintings and these sculptures by Alejandro Santiago, a very important artist from Oaxaca who died actually in 2013. And Santiago's best known work is called the 2,501 blah, 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 migrants. And it's he made it when he came back from Paris to his little town in Oaxaca, and realized that there were that many people missing. And so he thought, as a personal kind of atonement, that he would make a sculpture for every person that had left. 2,501 sculptures, the one was for him. And so he made these very striking clay sculptures that are probably almost the height of a person. And over a period of 3 years, worked with a team, and they were all made from terracotta. And I've seen photographs of them like on the side of a hill. And I don't know if the collection is still together or whether different parts are traveling the world. But the idea of the migrant, the persons who are not there, really accorded in some strange way with Comala, just conceptually, because in Comala there are all these spirits who cannot leave. They cannot leave the town because they say there's not enough people left alive to pray for them to go to heaven. There's like not enough pray fuel, to propel them. And then on the aesthetic side, of course, the design of these sculptures it's so much of the earth. It's very, very striking work, and they're very stiff. So they look also like the way you imagine, like mummies or things like that. I mean, there's a stiffness to them that's part of the expression. So he decided to design the puppets based on this, and it was wonderful to collaborate with them. I mean, they drove me crazy sometimes because, I guess that's what artists do to each other. but he is so creative, this guy, and it was just it's fantastic. Yeah.
That's amazing. Without putting you on the spot, I mean, where do you see Kamala going and growing in the future? And do you have any maybe new ideas, that for Kamala and for future Dieter productions?
I think it's gonna become a solo guitar piece. That's where it's going.
Yeah, I think turning this album into a solo guitar album, I think, is your next step.
I know. It's like guitar with tenor obbligato.
That's right.
No, it's I don't know. I'll have to talk to Jesse. Maybe we can bring the mandolin in now, and just like tour with him too.
Anytime.
It'd be wonderful. But I'm just kind of letting it grow as it goes. It's. I mean, I don't know if it's a justification for my way of composing, but it feels conceptually really right to just get more characters to have a voice there. More of Pedro Páramo, who finally appeared, because for many years, Pedro Páramo, everyone talked about him in the work. He was never heard. So finally, he appeared. When you performed, you premiered that scene with Tony, where he speaks about Susana Papalotes.
So, oh my God. I'm so glad you kept writing, because that is like probably, I mean, there's so many favorite parts, but I mean, that's clearly a crowd favorite among the Zone Collective.
I really enjoy that. Now having this family also of musicians, that I can bring this, and everyone is just so kind and amazing with it. And so it's, I guess it'll just grow until I'm gone, until I'm part of some other Kamala. But I think it's just the way it's going to go with that particular piece, just adding slowly.
Thank you. Awesome. I'm gonna poke Jesse now, because he's been too quiet.
Oh, yeah.
Scheming in the background.
So Zach, I have a question. Can you hear
me
and see me?
Oh, I can see you very clearly, and you are crystal clear. Thank you.
I can't see or hear myself here, so I'm shooting
Can
blind
any
here.
of us really?
I'm frozen on my screen, so I just wanted to double check.
Oh,
you look great. It's perfect.
Looking good.
Yeah. So in the text of Ricardo's piece, it talks about this world that's tearing us apart, and the text, I could not have thought of a better fit for the text with Dark is Yonder Town, which is it talks about the darkness of the world, but it really does kind of end on a bit of a hopeful note. I mean, it is the prayer and redemption and way forward that I'm hoping we find. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about your choice of the text and the piece, and how you came about it, and your process.
Sure. I came across the text not by any design of my own. I was just handed that text by my choir director some 15 years ago, actually. And it's a text from an English translation made 150 years ago, I think, or 100, even more, like 1860s, I think. It's just a collection of translations of folk tales and folk texts, and I think they were, from the British Isles. And those always struck a chord for me. And this person gave them to me just saying, like, well, if you ever want to set this to music, it's a special text, I'd like you to look through it. And I've sort of had it around for good 15 years or something. And so I immediately thought of it when you asked me to write a piece, right? And but also I was thinking of it because of the time in my life that I'm in. And I think it's so fun to see how this has come to fruition with you and Dieter having young children now, and my oldest child is now going off to college.
Oh dear.
And so we're sort of on the opposite end of this. And this text for Dark is Yonder Town speaks of, dark is yonder town, darker those within, sort of a fear or some feeling of angst about sending your kid off into the world, right? You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how they're going to treat your child. It's kind of a delicate and fragile moment in one's life, I think. I think Ricardo's been through this with his kids as well. He's even further along this path than I am. but the next part of the text talks about this brown swan. You are the brown swan going in among them, and that's a symbol for a young swan that's not yet fully mature. They're brown. Their feathers are brown when they're young and before they become white feathered. And just sending them off with wishes, and they give the good graces, right? You just want them to do well in the world, and here's what I would love for you to have. And it just seems sort of like this kind of I don't know what like a ritual or something that I could put into a song for two of my favorite musicians, and I'm really happy with how it came out, and just the overall feeling and the that you guys put into the performance of the work. So yeah,
Thank you.
I don't know if that really answered your question, but that's what it's about.
No, I appreciate that. And in writing, could you just talk a little bit about the musical? I mean, I never get to talk to composers, especially not live. Maybe just tell me a little bit about the musical process. So, I asked you to write. I mean, I gave you like super vague, write something. I think I said something, inspired by Dowland or John Donne, or something in that kind of textual landscape. And you came up with this, amazing magnum opus. So how did it get from that line to handing me a manuscript over coffee in Oberlin, Ohio?
Oh right, yeah. It's always a mystery to me how a piece comes about, because I think it was just many days sitting with the guitar and trying to come up with some line over a cool chord that I came up with. And then after that came together, it was sort of like, okay, what can I cut out of this, or what can I add to put all these parts together into something that makes a form? Because really, I don't know how Ricardo feels about this, but often the notes are not hard, but it's how the notes make sense over a form that is really difficult for me personally. And so I have tons of notes in my hands and in my head, but just making them into something that's compelling across in time is what's hard for me. So I would just say I just sat with the guitar and tried to sing the lines, and that's how it came about. But I also want to say that musicians, such as the two of you, can sort of act like a muse. Often when I go to think of how to write a piece, I'll just close my eyes and imagine the people I'm writing for coming out onto a stage that I love and know, real or imagined. And they just start playing my piece, and then often that'll give me some inspiration for what to do with the notes I've been writing. So you guys definitely did that, because I know both of your playing, and Zach, I must say, when I think of writing for tenor, yours is the voice I think of. And when I think of writing for guitar, Dieter. So this was a dream collaboration.
As a tenor, I couldn't hear that enough. So
well, if I may just say how also both of your music becomes a sort of a part of our lives. I mean, for me, of course, Komala has been with me for many years, and it's been wonderful to see grow. But also, it's funny, but over this Italian festival a few years ago, it's where I fell in love with my wife, and it's when I was cramming for Ricordanza, which is your solo guitar piece, Jesse.
Right.
And we always think of Ricordanza, and it reminds us, it puts us right there, this really beautiful, absolutely magical work that I was desperately trying to make justice in this festival where I had to learn many works.
I remember that.
And so and now, of course, with Dark Yonder Town, and also with the guitar concerto, which we have not been able to premiere because of COVID, but that it's already written, and I've been already practicing it. And as I told you before the podcast, I thank you, because it's really helped me get through this quarantine, to have this beautiful work that it just pushes my technique. And I guess what I just wanted to ask you, Jesse, is, of course, you play both mandolin and guitar extremely well, and there's many videos of you on YouTube doing this. I just wonder, when you're writing for the instrument, how do you come up with ways to push the player to sort of the technical extremes? I mean, to this sort of, there's this level of virtuosity, but that's also very rewarding from the side of the player. Everything works, everything fits, but it still creates a very unique sonority, and without sort of giving into sort of it's not necessarily that formulaic, or the way guitar writing can get.
Well, I'm happy to hear you say that it works, because whatever you're saying only comes from me not knowing what I'm doing. Very honestly, like the mandolin is really not that much like the guitar, right? It's totally different fingerings. I play banjo much more than I play the guitar, and I think those 3-finger rolls sort of transfer into how I think about the guitar, which is definitely not the 4-finger thing that guitarists do. So I honestly, very honestly, that's my answer. I don't actually know anything about the guitar. Honestly, I don't know I don't know. It's very honest. I don't know what the hell the notes are when I look at the neck. I'm feeling it out, and I have to figure out what the notes are later. So it's very much just like me looking in the dark at this thing. And I now have something like 2 hours of guitar music, and it's still a mystery.
Amazing.
And I'm kind of embarrassed to admit it, but I'm very happy to hear you say that it works, because I'm just like, oh man, the guitar again.
That's what the reviews. Quote from Jesse Jones: "I don't know how to write for guitar."
That's how I feel every time.
Again.
It's a hard instrument to write for.
Wow.
I like how this is becoming a support group now.
Yeah.
we're all talking.
I've been a tenor for 9 years. Yeah. Amazing. Dieter, do you have any more questions for these fine young gentlemen?
Well, I guess. Well, with Jesse, he already wrote a guitar concerto. So for Ricardo, my question is, when is the guitar concerto coming? Which, of course, we know that Papalotes was first a guitar concerto, and then it became a movement of Comala. So I know when Ricardo tells me I'm going to write a concerto for guitar now, that it's going to be another movement of Comala. But I'm just wondering, where is it? We're waiting for it.
I ask myself the same question. No, it's interesting, because I think it's just the way the inspiration works. It's interesting to hear Jesse and the kind of physicality of the instrument, and getting into that particular performative mode of composing. I think ultimately the best music, like all composers have, I think, that conversation, or at least it should be there. I think the idea that you are in the performative space of composing and also thinking about it. And it's that kind of weird conversation that actually makes you grow in time and really find a way forward, so that you're not doing the same thing, but you keep that. If you're not in that performative space, then I think you're not really composing with your full musicianship. You're composing with just, this part of the brain that tells you all sorts of wonderful reasons why you should or should not do something. So I identify with that a lot, of getting kind of lost in the piece. And the problem is that the sense of vocal line is always so strong that I end up wanting always to have a singer, and also because of the connection with literature. So it's true that I've written several pieces that were supposed to be for like a guitar concerto. One was also, it's now a song, Day, in country, right? It became that, and then Papalotes became that. Although with Papalotes, I kind of knew from the get-go, because I was using ideas from Comala, and so then it just went in. But I'm trying, and it's one of my aspirations. Now I'll listen to Jesse's concerto and maybe get some pointers, and hopefully one day, it's
amazing.
Well, it's interesting, just from the guitar writing standpoint, how especially the early movements of Comala, where it was a more percussive use of the instrument, and it has been sort of transitioning to a more melodic role, in a way, if I can use that. But for Jesse, it's always been a very sort of a very melodic use of the guitar. I mean, that's what stands out about Ricordanza. You know, you have this beautiful lines that you kind of then add this beautiful robust textures, you know, with the lots of arpeggios and so on and so forth. But it's not the sort of the percussive use of let's say like a last movement of a Ginastera sonata or Subir y Bajar from Comala or whatnot. And I'm wondering for you, Jesse, what's because we've collaborated now in several works of yours. I mean, there's Ricordanza, there's the preludes, the Rachmaninoff inspired preludes that came about upon our conversations in Madison, Wisconsin a few years back. And then
at the premiere of another work.
At the premiere of another work, that's right. The Fluted Guitar Sonata, which is just amazing, which is in the album CD of Duo Damiana, just a little sponsor plug there for myself, where I played with the great Molly Barth, flute teacher at Vanderbilt. And then, of course,
let's keep the advertisements to a minimum.
And but now the concerto, of course, and you kind of have, I don't know if I could be wrong, but you have not used the guitar in a very percussive way, would you say?
I haven't. I of course absolutely respect Ricardo's music, and of course the Ginastera Sonata. I just have never felt comfortable with those techniques, or that I would use them and they'd be gimmicky, right? And because I feel like if they don't naturally come to my head, then if I try to use them, it would be sort of forced and fake. And I really admire music that can do it without seeming that way. There's so much of it, but for me, I just don't hear it, and so yeah, that's how it is.
Yeah.
I must say though, one thing I love about the guitar, and especially having written for the guitar with voice, is that what I love about it is that it's such a small instrument, and even a forte on the guitar, it seems loud, but it's not actually loud, you know?
Right.
And if you're quiet on the guitar, then the audience has to really focus in on this very small, intimate place. Even in a forte, it's not actually that loud, and that matches and balances so well with the voice. And I feel like, especially the guitar with Zach's particular tenor voice, is just really satisfying to hear because of that balance.
Thanks. I love working with guitar because you still have the same kind of forte range, but you can really take it down to this little thin pianissimo. Exactly. And I can do colors with the guitar I can't do with an orchestra, and it's so rewarding to be able to do that in public. And I loved it. I loved every minute of it. So.
Well, it's just kind of tying it in a little bit with what you were talking at the beginning, Zach, and about just how you went to Tanglewood and you've met all these great musicians. And it made me think, as I have some of my students tuning into this podcast, how in a way, when we're beginning our careers in music, it's sort of like in sports, you're drafted to one team or another and you just play with that team. But then eventually you have to move on and create your own dream team, and this is what I feel like these collaborations have been. I feel that way to me, that I've been able to now just collaborate with the musicians that I want, and it has taken me to explore music that I honestly didn't see myself recording. I never thought I was going to record the Britain folk songs, not because I don't like them, just because I don't know, it was out of my radar. But then when I heard you and just the way you did them, the way you sing this repertoire, the Dowland and the Britain and everything else, of course, it's just so beautiful and it's so effortless that you say, okay, this is I have to do this project, and it's also. It kind of shapes the way that I feel. For me as a performer, the sounds that I try to get out of my guitar are directly linked. When you're accompanying a singer, it's a dialogue. So it makes you go, to unexpected places, acoustically speaking, to try to get sounds of the instrument that would hopefully match your voice.
No, absolutely. And I say right back at you, I mean, this has been a musical dream team for me. And 2018 was just a transformative year working with the Zone Collective. And, I was like, I don't know where this music came from, but why wasn't it in my life in conservatory? And why can't I just keep doing this all the time? So I feel like this group partnership, we'll be seeing hopefully some more things, maybe a solo guitar concerto from everybody. And I'll record background vocals.
I personally liked the idea about guitar, mandolin, and tenor from Ricardo.
Hey,
that should happen.
Thank you. Yeah,
I mean, agree. Yeah.
But I'll have to tell you, when I just remember something very funny, that when I wrote that piece that you performed, Jesse, it was, remember, there was like a concertino group of clocked instruments, right?
Yeah, with harpsichord in the middle.
Yeah, harpsichord and guitar and all sorts of things. And I remember I wrote this mandolin. So I went and bought myself a mandolin, and I returned it at the end of the day because I couldn't make a sound out of it. It was like so hard to. I thought I played the guitar. Oh my god, it's like, yeah. And so I returned the thing, and then so I thought, well, I'll just ask Jesse. So I sent Jesse these chords that I had, and I said, hey Jesse, what do you think? And he's like, no, explained why they were difficult, and maybe how to make them easier and all this stuff so they would sound better. So then I reworked them. I send them to him, and he says, "Okay, now they sound worse." So I was like, God, it's interesting because it seems like such a simple instrument, like the tuning like a violin. I mean, it's so difficult to really write well for it, but it's a totally different instrument than the guitar. I learned that.
It really is. It really is.
Now
That's funny.
Yeah, I know. That was really funny. But no, that would be awesome to do. And I just wanted to just add, like, that social aspect of music making is something that it's very different from the models of generations before, or this idea that the composer kind of has to write for whatever and you just do it. And yes, in some ways, sometimes you get a commission, you write a piece and all that. But I believe that ultimately, when you're really connected to a group of musicians, then it really changes your composition. I mean, I don't know, I can't really even stress that. Like, now when I think of the people I collaborate with and all this, it really changes you. It shapes how you write, what you want to do. And I'm sure Jesse can talk to that too. I mean, it's really, there's the social component is very enmeshed with the artistic one, to a degree that it's hard to know before you're in that situation. So yeah, it's been great to have you guys there for that reason. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I'm so happy that everyone could get together from the confines of their room and say hello. And I'm so grateful to have you all in my life. And I miss you all so very much. And I hope we can make beautiful music together in person soon. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for showing up here and producing this, or for writing this beautiful music, and for Dieter for showing up at some point. And I think he did something. And here's to many solo guitar concertos with vocal accompaniment from here on out.
Well, actually, I have to add, I mean, as we had already talked, Zach, with that, there was this realization, when we finished this album, that this was the first of a collection. Like, it's the first of many. It's just that sometimes you strike a chord, you strike that collaboration. And I would love to. I'm sure we will, actually, if there are no future pandemics in our horizon, to head to Seattle every couple of years and work with Mark and create a body of works, which is what I'm really passionate about. That to continue to create literature for our instrument. The guitar we have a wonderful repertoire, but we also have a long way to go, and that's more or less where I like to think that I can help with that.
Absolutely, that is definitely happening. I'm, both of Jesse and Ricardo have instilled in me such a love of new music, And I'm going to keep doing it, as I said, until I can't. And I want you all involved. And Dieter can come out to Seattle, and Remy and Santi can have a play date. And
Oh, that would be great.
really cute.
Nice.
Oh, that would be lovely. Well, Santi's taking a nap right now. That's why the house is quiet. I wonder if that's the same thing that's happening.
Remy's not taking a nap. Devorah is really being a heroine right now. But anyway, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. Thanks, Mark, for hosting. And I hope we meet again soon. And I know we'll all be collaborating again soon. And lots of love from Seattle.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you all.
Thank you all, Jesse.